everyone, welcome to another Random Talk Sunday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss my favorite games that I enjoyed playing as a child, ones that I thought were to be fairly interesting and enjoyable, and some that I even play to this day. So I'll get sort of started and talk about a couple of these. First one I wanted to briefly mention is Monopoly. Now, the interesting thing about Monopoly, it's really the first game I think a lot of children have been introduced to that revolves around money and housing and things like that, and investment and all that jazz. So you kind of realize if you're willing or want to sort of be in that industry already right away once you start playing Monopoly. But I think the interesting and fun thing about Monopoly is despite its length, because for the most part, when I've played Monopoly, it has gone on for quite some time, is that it's still, I think, fairly enjoyable and that there's always something happening and there's always choices that you can make and, there's always little rewards that end up happening. So I think it's a fairly enjoyable game in that sense because it's still interesting despite the fact that it might take a little bit more time than maybe a traditional game does. So that's why I think Monopoly has stood out over the years, is because it's managed to maintain its level of interest, because as you go throughout the game there's always something there that ends up happening. And I think that's what makes it really interesting, and also the fact that there's like multiple options in as to what you can choose and what you're willing to risk. And so I think that's why I think it might appeal a lot to children, because it's kind of like a game of sort of wits, and at the same time a game based upon betting and choosing and whether you're willing to put some money on the table, for so and so much houses. And I think that's something that really does stand out about Monopoly, and why it's probably stayed as one of the most popular games over the years, even spinning off computer games at arcades now, where you can go and play Monopoly basically in an arcade. So and again, it's the fact that there's all these different versions of Monopoly that you can buy. I think it just goes to show that it has been one of the most popular and well-known games over the years, and has spawned different versions, and I think has really led to people having this wide appeal for it. So the next one I wanted to briefly talk about is Life. This game is probably not as well known as Monopoly, but I still think it's sort of similar and yet different to Monopoly, because it sort of involves money, but then at the same time it revolves around your life. So you start by picking out a career or whatnot, and then you sort of go on this journey, and then maybe you'll have some kids and then get married and all that stuff. And so it kind of goes through in a stream sort of things that could happen in your life, and at the end you end up at a retirement home. And I always found that to be a fun game to play as a kid, and I still sort of enjoy it at times now, because it's still one of those games where you can go through and there's always something that ends up happening, or there's always things that can result in you gaining money or losing money. So it's kind of similar to Monopoly in that sense, but I feel it's sort of different because it revolves around trying to create one single path, and you really can't choose that path. It's sort of designated for you based upon the spins. Whereas with Monopoly, if you land on something, sometimes you have the ability to choose, whereas in Life that's sometimes not the case. So I think it's sort of maybe limiting in certain respects, but at the same time I think it's all the more enjoyable, and the fact that you get like a little car and then you put people in the car if you get more kids or whatnot. It's just a fun little game, and I think definitely worth a recommendation if you're interested. Solitaire, the next one that I want to talk about, is really interesting, I think, to play by yourself on the computer. I find that to be a lot of fun, just going through Solitaire, and the fact that it just revolves around cards and strategy and things like that. I think it's really a brain game, and maybe that's why I liked it a lot as a kid, because I felt like I was training my brain at the same time while playing it. So I think that's something that made me enjoy playing, I guess, games on the computer. Although I wouldn't say I'm not really a video game fan, but at the same time, I think Solitaire was one of those that I really enjoyed doing. And I think it's just very simple and straightforward, and is all based upon how you want to move the cards, and ultimately that turns to your favor or not. So I think it's a very interesting uh, game, in the sense that it's, again, not as exciting as maybe Monopoly in life, and not as interactive, but at the same time I still feel like it's like a brain um, stimulator, because you're sort of thinking based upon how the cards are laid out what's the best move to take. So that's why I think Solitaire in particular is rather interesting. Twister is also, I think, another fun interactive game that I played over the years. In case you don't know, Twister is basically, you have like this laid out plastic form where there's all these different colors, and they're all pretty much specified within their groups, and there's a spinning wheel. And then somebody spins the wheel, and then based upon what it tells you, like right hand green, you put your right hand or left hand depending on the green, depending on what it tells you. And it does feet as well, so be either left hand or left foot this, right foot that. So it's a very it gets to be very complicated when it's hard to reach certain areas on the plastic mat. So that's what I think makes the game so much fun, and it's fun to play with other people, because sometimes you might run into them or you'll fall. And that's the idea, though, of Twisters, is that is to stay on your designated areas that have been placed, without you falling or over and hurting yourself or anything. So that's really the fun aspect about Twister, is trying to hold on while at the same time being stuck in other people's way. So it's a fun interactive game in that sense. So it's one that I've enjoyed over the years, and I think is definitely worth a lot of people's parties if you enjoy Twister. Scrabble is another one that I find to be fun. I always liked making words and seeing what other people could make from words, and sometimes it would get fairly complicated because sometimes the words wouldn't line up. And sometimes you just kind of have to end it in a draw because there's no other words to come up with. So it's kind of fun in that sense. And again, it's sort of a brain game too. You're using kind of your brain a little bit, similar to Solitaire. But unlike Solitaire, it's a little bit more interactive because you have one other person or a couple of people that are playing with you. And in case you don't know what Scrabble is, it's basically just a word game where you make words and you make sure that they all line up, and you're given like a board, and you have to make sure that it all lines up properly. In order for you to win, you have to have the most, because each tile is like a number, and then you put the amount of numbers that you get for writing each word on the tile or on the sheet that you have. And then whoever has the most numbers wins. Or and again, sometimes when there's when you run out of tiles or you can't think of any words, then both sides give up, and then depending on how much each side has, the one with the most numbers wins. Skip It was another game that I thought was very fun. This is a very individual game because basically all you do is you put on this little wrist band that has a sort of thing attached with a ball, and then you go around it, and the idea is to go around it as many times without not necessarily tripping and falling over your face, but making sure that you still skip it, you still go around. It's kind of like jump rope, but not using really your hands, just using your feet. I always found that to be very enjoyable, and I was actually really good at it. I remember that Skip, it was actually the one game that I was really good at. So I think that was just one that really stood out to me, and I loved playing. Um, the next one, Mahjong Titans, was another computer game that I really enjoyed playing. Basically, it's all these different kinds of Asian tiles, and you're supposed to match up the tiles together, but sometimes the tiles are not available because they're in another tile's space, so you can't pair the tiles together. And so it's a very strategy-oriented game, and it's a lot of thinking. So that's the one in particular that I always found to be very enjoyable when I was little, just, using that thinking side of my brain. So definitely worth a recommendation if you're interested. I think it's available like online if you are interested in that kind of thing, sort of similar to Solitaire. Ping pong online was another fun one. I usually didn't play ping pong in arcades. I think that was because computers were suddenly starting to take over, so it was a lot easier to access a ping pong thing from just playing it online. And I remember playing it online on the very old computer that my parents had. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun just playing with it and, just just seeing where the ball goes and making sure that the ball goes in and then racking up as many points as you could. And, that was fun. I always enjoyed doing that kind of little thing. The second to last one I wanted to mention briefly is I Spy. Now, this was an online game too where I had the sort of Halloween version where you would go to a haunted house and then you would try to find things, and that's why it's called I Spy. And then the whole goal was to get out of the haunted house because they would like lock you, the person would like, who had the voice would lock you in and say you need to find all of these and these items, and then once you find all of this stuff then you'll get out. And so that was the whole the whole fun bit of the game, and I really enjoyed playing it. It was one of those computer games that got me very intrigued, and there was all these different little levels and stories within the house that you could go through, and I just thought it was really cool. Like, it was just really nicely set up, and it was interesting, and I think was supposed to be sort of based upon the books, the I Spy books. And I never found those interesting, but I found the game online, the haunted house one, to be really, really fun. And there was like a lot of little spooky things that would happen too. So it was great to play. I always thought it was fun. And the last one I wanted to briefly mention is Mikado. Mikado's like this game where you hold on to all of these sticks and then you let all these sticks go, and then they land somewhere, and then the idea is to get all of the sticks without moving the other sticks. So you have to be very patient. I wouldn't say I wasn't as good in Mikado as some of the other games, but the Mikado one I thought was one that was really interesting, and you too could get different amounts of points depending on which sticks you got. And so it was always fun playing. You could either play with yourself just to see if you could get all the sticks, or you could play with multiple people. And usually I played with family members. But I also found that one to be a lot of fun and interesting, even though it does take a little bit of patience. And I could kind of understand why there's some that it may not be meant for them necessarily. But yeah, I think those are all really the games that I wanted to mention. I'm more than happy to hear what anybody else has played over the years in their childhood, whether it be back then or now, whether they be on the computer, whether they be even video games, whether they be card games or board games or anything of that nature. I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say about this topic. But I think that's ultimately all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.